All right, let's get right into it here. Market is down about 0.2% on the S&P, as you can see right here. Nasdaq is down, also semiconductor also down. Biotech is flat, Apple down, Google up, looks like Nvidia is down. Tesla's up 3%. It's been a while we saw anything green on Tesla there. Bitcoin, Riot, Coin, these guys are down today after a big move yesterday. Gold is up, silver's down, treasury bond, VIX is up a little bit. Let's stick with S&P 500 ETF. Spider! 65-minute chart here. So this is where we closed yesterday. And yesterday's setup, there's a little bit of shenanigans going on here the last couple of days. Okay, let me talk to you about this. So this was a last night setup. So yesterday, right, we wake up in the morning and we see that market gaps down, right? Market gaps down below the micro-term moving average, right? That's a micro-term right here. And market understands that micro-term's been really putting pressure on the bears, because that micro-term, every single time it acts to support and market gets right back up. We talked about the micro-term, right? The micro-term is always supporting the buyers for the last like 2-3 months. So bears didn't want to deal with that. So what do? They gap it down, right? And then they get actually this is where they closed, and then this is where it opened, right? And you know, this market is so bullish that we don't even see a tankage after the down gap, and we see upside move, as you can see here. And what it did was it stayed just underneath the micro-term all day long, which I was talking about, that bears are reprogramming the micro-term to support their sellers. And I thought that reprogramming was successful on the last hour yesterday, because we see that bearish engulfing candle there. Pretty much that last hour candle engulfs the entire day of price action, pretty much, right? And so, and this time, what happened was, this was all happening with the down gap still remaining open. Keep in mind though, it was an island down gap, but that island down gap was negated upon further investigation, because what happened was, so you see this wick right here, right? So you can see this wick and that wick here. So this, I saw that later. So what happened was, the island down gap, the island portion of it was canceled on that 5th hour, because for the island gap to be sustained, it has to make sure there's no interference on that gap. Because remember, this was an up gap, right? This is an up gap right here. That's an up gap, and then this is a down gap, right? There has to be no interference, meaning that that gap from the up gap and the down gap, there has to be smooth airflow. But that airflow was interrupted because that lower wick hit it, and then that upper wick. So pretty much island gap, the island down gap was canceled. But the regular portion, the regular down gap still remaining, yes? As of, we're talking about as of yesterday at close. So then with the gap remains open, it seemed as though micro-term moving average, that aqua moving average here, was successfully reprogrammed as the bears through that engulfing candle. So I think a lot of bears are looking for the follow through to the downside, maybe a down gap or a continuation, right? But instead, when we come to the market this morning, what happened? We gapped up. Not only it gapped above the micro-term, So this is where we closed yesterday, and this is where it opened. And you see that spinning top candle there, and you see how that lower wick is definitely aware of my microterm, right? You see that? For 3 hours, we got 3 spinning tops here. And as I was tweeting it out earlier this afternoon, that bulls are trying to reprogram the microterm to support the bulls. As long as if they can sustain this up gap. Well, on the 4th hour, it was sort of all around the microterm, and then on the 5th hour is right there. And then on the 6th hour, the last hour, we lost the microterm. It's almost like the market knows, man. It's a microterm game, right? As soon as the microterm was lost, and I figure, I think what happened was the reason why we're seeing that 2-day shenanigans here. I figure after the candle and price action of yesterday, I think a lot of shorts jumped in. And then when we see an up gap, maybe they're forced to cover very, very quickly. Because again, this market is known to see an up gap above the microterm. Last 2 months or so, it made a continuation to the upside. And then those people who flipped back long, right? They're no longer short. They cover their short. Maybe even they cover their short and they go long. And then they place their stop, very tight stop. Because these microterm traders are microterm. So they're going to have a microterm stops. They're going to have a very, very tight stop. And that's what the last hour of today's price action. So now the up gap from this morning is closed. The bulls failed to reprogram the microterm. We have even bigger, looks like bigger bearish candle. This candle is ×2 of this. So that panic sort of got increased here because again, these shenanigans that we're seeing, right? Gap down sideways, turn, gap up sideways, turn again. So microterm has been lost. Microterm has been lost. So now that microterm is lost, what is the bears looking for? Well, the bears are looking for a downside continuation move. Last time, when the microterm was lost here, when the microterm was violated here, what we did witness was a down gap. Right here. Down gap. Microterm lost. Right here. Down gap next day. Microterm lost. Like trade underneath it, we see a down gap. Even here. I mean, we're just kind of right on it. I mean, it wasn't fully lost, but anyhow, slightly underneath the microterm, we see a down gap. Today, microterm is fully lost. So expecting to see a possible down gap to retest my short term here, currently coming at traveling at 516.77 because that's where we found support here. But on this day right here, on the 17th, we came down to the midterm, which is 514.75. So we're looking at next level of support. And we do have a microterm support. Like let's say we don't see like a big down gap, but market sort of like gaps a little bit, hang around at 517 because the 517 is previous swing high, previous resistance, which could potentially act as support. So right now, bears don't want to just hang around a little bit because we have too many support areas where bulls can bring it back up. 517 is a previous swing high. It's the pivot. We got 516-ish level. This entire level is previous swing highs. Previous swing high, previous swing high, previous pivot. So this entire band of support right here. 517, 518, 516. And that's the level where I see that my short term is residing, guarding that level. So 517, 518, 517, 516, this entire band of support is going to be a support area unless bears gap it down underneath the short term like they did here. You see this one's gap down below the short term. and then it came down to the midterm. If we see a gap down below the short term, again, currently 516.77, we're going to the midterm. We also have to keep in mind what this market is capable of. This market has been playing around here with some shenanigan upside gap up. So just some shenanigan upside gap up or something like that tomorrow morning above the micro term. All of this is negated. If that gap sustained, bulls getting right back up, right? So bears are desperately seeking a follow through to the downside. Check out that oscillator. So this is the first time, ladies and gentlemen, in 2 months. First time. This is the first time in 2 months we're possibly seeing that oscillator whipsaw. And it's not fully whipsawed yet. We just got the formation. You see that? Let's say we see some kind of shenanigan gap up or some kind of thrust in the morning out of nowhere. We see this big green bar tomorrow morning. Well, this thing is just going to go, it's not going to cross down. It's going to just go back up. So then we cannot label this as an whipsaw, right? That's not a whipsaw. Whipsaw would be if we see a continuation tomorrow, this thing fully crosses down. What I mean by that is since early February, when we did see that oscillator hitting the oversold zone, every single time without fail, that oscillator crossed up without whipsaw, meaning after that oscillator initially crossed up, this is what happened. It crossed up this morning. There has never been a case since February 1st that it whipsawed back down. Every single time that became the low. Every single time. Since February. Right? So if we see a whipsawing action tomorrow, we see a continuation to the downside tomorrow morning, this thing whipsaws back down. That will be the first since February 1st. And I'm not going to take that lightly because when you see something changes in the matrix like this, right? Because this has never happened before. Why all of a sudden we're seeing whipsawing, right? Then maybe something has changed in the matrix. And I think if we do see a follow through, especially a down gap tomorrow morning, and then that down gap is sustained, ladies and gentlemen, we have not seen the long-term moving average retested since January 17th, I believe. Yes, see, that's long-term right there. Long-term, that thick gray blue moving average, that thick gray blue has not been retested since January 17th. And interestingly, that was a whipsaw right here, but that happened right in the middle of it. So I don't know if I can categorize that whipsaw to this one because this one's near the oversold. Nonetheless, there's a little whipsawing happen. Whipsaw did happen in middle of January, especially right on that there. Again, even January here, that micro term was lost right here. Micro term loss, micro term loss, micro term loss, down gap. Right. So that's kind of sort of in the trend. Micro term gets lost, we see a down gap. So if we see a down gap or flush to the downside tomorrow, that oscillator right here will be whipsawed back down. That has not happened for 2 months. Something has changed in the matrix. And if that's the case, I could see my long-term moving average getting retested for the first time since January 17th, which is currently traveling at 512.37. 512.37. So my long-term moving average on my 65-minute chart here has not been retested. If that whipsawing happened tomorrow and it blows through the 517, 516, it blows through the short-term moving average, then we have my long-term currently traveling at 512.37. And that's a stronger support because not only do we have a long-term moving average in that vicinity, we do have a pretty sizable up gap there. There's no up gap, you see? There's no up gap in that vicinity. So with that whipsawing action, bears are, maybe putting a little bit more effort here And if that whipsawing action happened, I could see 5, 12, 37. I'm gonna come back for you. We'll reassess the situation. Enjoy your evening. Go train tomorrow.